Yes, okay, welcome. Greetings and salutations. I'm Dr. John Lenarchik, blah, blah, blah. This is Wednesday, the discussion in ISIS 3300. This is Ethics Religious Society, and as you can see, we have a philosopher with a long beard, in the audience because that's what philosophers actually look like. I'm trying to find a picture of I'd like to actually change my avatar to. No, that's leafy green vegetables. Sorry, I don't look like a cabbage. Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. This is one of my. Ah, here it is. Yeah, and let me see. Come on. No, sorry. I'm talking to myself. Right, this is really. Oh, okay. So, um, no, I'm asking myself questions, right? Okay, so if I wanted to change my avatar, I would change it to, and I hope a porn site doesn't appear. Sorry. Let's see. Okay, here, yeah, that's the one. And you see that thing there? I don't know if you can see it. The halter.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, that's exactly what I look like. I mean, after months of lockdown.
Coconut virus.
That's exactly what I actually look like. I look like. See, I think you scared somebody away. So I look like Horta from the classic Star Trek episode, The Devil in the Dark. And I think that was a really interesting episode of Star Trek. It's more like they get sent to some planet because it's being strip mined or whatever. And they say, oh yeah, our miners are kind of disappearing and they're ending up being kind of melted down, etc. What's happening in these tunnels, right? And then they find this kind of like thing, the halter that I showed you, and it can actually, secrete acid from its skin or its exterior, right? And then it can basically tunnel through rock, so it kind of melts the rock, the acid that comes from its body, right? So it's like a mine, and then they think, oh, it's a kind of evil, like a rat, let's kill it, etc. Right? And the mine say, let's destroy it, right? But of course, Spock can actually touch things, right? And kind of read them, mine, or like that was a Vulcan mine now, my mind is your mind, etc. And then he finds out that they're actually intelligent creatures, and that Horta was kind of missing its mate, etc. because it got killed or whatever, that kind of thing. And then basically, spoiler alert, at the end of the episode, Spock and the Star Trek crew have actually turned the Horta and his kind of family into allies to the miners because they can actually tunnel because of the acid that comes out of the skin. So they actually work with the humans, so it's a kind of win-win situation. But I think the moral of that story is quite valid even today. It's more like don't fear the unknown. Don't fear the unknown, which is like, and racism as well. So if you see something that looks like me after, months and months, you shouldn't be afraid, because it could be somebody that can actually help you tunnel through that. Okay. And then people might say, you see, John is definitely a geek because he has to actually have a Star Trek reference in everything that he says, What's today's topic? Today's theme is intellectual property rights in the digital age. And I think I did actually suggest that people read an article or look at an article that was that kind of crossed my radar, because I think the thing is that if you want to find out what's hot or not, there's a reference, hot or not. You read my emails earlier? We'll talk more about that in a minute.
Yeah.
Hot or not. But what's hot or not in terms of ethics? So if you want to find out what's cool, about digital ethics. What I normally do is I actually open up Google News and I just type in digital ethics, or I type in privacy, or I type in online privacy, and I see what is actually the latest hot bit of gossip that people are talking about. And yeah, there was an article a couple of days ago, basically someone online on some site saying that online piracy is digital looting. And you know what looting is? Looting is like when you have a riot in a city or something like that, and then people kind of go through it and they smash windows, right? And then people who are doing window shopping go past, oh, look! The window is open, let's go in and take some things, right? And that's looting. It's kind of like not the same as actually deliberately planning a theft. I mean, that would be like, really a bad thing, because they're actually, planning this in advance. Whereas looting is more opportunistic. And in the past few years, maybe going back 10, 15 years, right, there have been incidences of, riots in various cities in the world, and there's always looting that happens in the wake of riots. So in the UK, there were riots in London, and people couldn't figure out why there were riots, because they couldn't figure out what they were protesting against at that time. And it was the findings from some research were interesting because it was more like middle class youth who just happened to engage in looting because it was opportunistic. They were there with their mates decided to riot for whatever reason, and then they just kind of walked through a broken window and took a stereo set or a laptop computer or something like that, even though they didn't have to, because a lot of those people were actually quite well off, and they came from well-off families, etc. Which is great.
Can I tell you a joke? Can I tell you a joke?
Yeah.
You ready? So there was a boy and a girl, and the girl talks the boyfriend into going out window shopping during the night, because bored at night. So okay, all right, yeah, I'll come with you. So they come up to a window, and it's got things in there that she really likes, like dresses or something. She goes, I really like those, right? And so he turns around, grabs a brick off the footpath and smashes it through the window, and takes one of the dresses, gives it to her, and he says, "Yep, there you go." Right. So they walk on a little bit further on, and she says, "Geez, that looks really nice in that shop." So he grabs another brick off the footpath and smashes the window and takes that and gives it to her. And then they get to another shop, and she says the same thing again, right? And he turns around to her and says, "What do you think? I'm made of bricks or something."
You just make that up on the spot, right?
No, old joke.
Old joke, yeah. No, old joke, because you mentioned brick, right? I knew a guy, and his standard response was, I wish I had a brick and a shotgun. You know what I mean? He was angry about something. I wish I had a brick and a shotgun. It's like, I can see the real, interesting superhero or supervillain,
So when you go window shopping, some people can't afford it, but they're very rich in bricks.
Well, the other day I was kind of walking within my 5-kilometre radius, as is my walk, right? And I went past a convenience store, and not a 7-Eleven, right? And I noticed that the front, because they're all glass, all the shops in the city, right? And the door, the bottom part, was actually kind of smashed, but not smashed through, and the glass as well. It almost looked like somebody that during when curfew comes in, right, wanted to smash a hole in the door and crawl through and get, I don't know, cigarettes or lollies or something like that. And various parts of the city, I've seen that. Kind of attempts to smash windows, but I think that what a lot of people don't realise is that the glass in those shopfront windows is actually quite thick. It's not, it's not that easy to actually smash. You know, I mean, you're liable to actually do yourself a lot of damage, right? You know, and you're right. You probably need to be walking around with a brick in the city, right? And with the number of police vans going around, that'd be a bit conspicuous, right? So, what are you doing walking around at night? You know, with two bricks, you know. And where would you find a brick? That's just it. You see what I mean? Like, it's not like you can find a brick in the city, right? You know. Um, yeah, thoughts that go through your head. Um, but yeah, what I've got here, because okay, this week's theme is intellectual property, digital age, and I think every time we talk about this, if we're actually live, we always make fun about pirates, you know, and I think I would play a video which is in the learning activities section, talk like a pirate, you know. And I think I did say that we could actually sweet talk you, Julia, into talking like a pirate. You want to say something in Pirateese? Sorry. Avast. Remember? Avast.
Yeah.
And it's that, right? There's actually, a day each year which is Talk Like a Pirate Day, believe it or not, right? And so, because, every day there's a celebration of something. Like, I think last Saturday or Friday was International Paella Day. You know, paella, it's a Spanish dish, rice, meat, etc., that kind of thing, right? So I don't know what they do on Paella Day, right? Have a parade through the city when you're allowed to, throw paella at each other, etc. But yeah, I think in this month, in fact, in September, right, it's supposed to be International Talk Like a Pirate Day, and there you go. You should be doing my research for me. I'm trying to actually find out when is International Talk. Oh yeah, Talk Like a Pirate Day. Okay. Oh yes, 19th of September. Saturday, 19th of September. We missed it. Oh shucks.
21st.
21st. Yeah.
Comments, yeah.
Oh, okay. So I guess we missed it. Yeah. Anyhow, I have a fascination with piracy, right? So I think I did get everybody, what's the least that you need to actually do every week? Because people always say, John, there's so much material on Canvas, right? It would take a lifetime to go through. And then I would say, well, you go into any major public library and there's a lot of books, And not only that, but, if you've got, I don't know if people have DVDs, Blu-ray box sets, right? And you look on the side and it says number of minutes, right? For in the complete series or whatever, or Wire or Game of France, for example. And the thing is, like, if you add up all the hours of all these box sets, it would take up, quite a lot of time. And then some people might think, well, I've just estimated that I've got so many box sets that, I'd have to have 3 lifetimes to actually watch everything that I have, right? And I probably then need to outsource my viewing. I have to actually get other people to view my box sets for me. And then comes summarize the interesting things in the don't laugh, Ilya. I mean, this could be a future business for us, in post-COVID, right? Because I did hear once that in India, there are actually people, like Airtasker, Airtasker do anything for you, including write assignments, but I kind of discouraged that for students, of course. But apparently in India, you can pay people to actually wear in your shoes for you. Because, if you're a man, for example, and you buy a pair of business shoes, for example, usually, even if they fit you, they're kind of very tight, right? And the person that's selling you the shoes says, don't worry, sir, right? It will kind of wear in a couple of weeks' time. But apparently in India, you can actually get people to wear in your shoes for you, right? And then, you can feel comfortable in it. So I'm thinking that's what we can do post-COVID militarily. We can, watch people's collections for them and just tell them what's good about it. So I remember one of my friends once said to me that, and it was an interesting phenomenon that he was trying to relate. And the thing is, he said that he thought that if his friends tell him about something, like, oh, I've seen a fantastic movie, or listen to a song, and they try to describe it to him as to why they like it, then it actually seems better than if he actually experiences it himself. What do you think, Elliot? Is that like a weird, crazy idea?
Well, I'm still on Moonbase Alpha.
I know, because you're getting everything really slow, right? Because it's like you're still on the Sopranos or the X Files, right? Yeah. What I'm showing everybody now, right, is because piracy, right, is kind of what we started talking about, right? And I guess people, use that term pirate to refer to anybody that kind of plunders, unknown treasure that perhaps don't belong to them because they haven't paid for it. And since the advent of platforms that enable people to actually download stuff, online, and I guess what was the first one? The most popular, Napster. Remember, Ilya, Napster?
Napster. Refresh.
You don't know Napster?
No.
Maybe I'm not pronouncing it correctly. Nap. Okay. Napster. Napster?
You're looking up.
Okay, but let me just first describe what we're watching here, right? This is a site called Torrent Freak, right? So nowadays when people kind of want to plunder stuff, right? And of course the people would say this is a bad thing because it's like digital looting, right? You use something called BitTorrent. So BitTorrent was a piece of software that was created by one person, I think Graham Cohen, right? And normally I dug up a picture of him, right? And I would normally show it in class because often people, when they use software, they don't relate it to actually human beings. It's almost like, oh, it's a piece of software that came from. Yeah? But I always find it interesting or kind of warm and fuzzy to know, or at least kind of be aware that some human actually created something. I don't know. People use Word or PowerPoint or Excel, but do you actually know or even care who actually created those platforms?
Yeah.
Or packages?
No.
I think but the thing is like the concept of the spreadsheet, right? I mean, there's two people, Dan Bricklin and Bob Frankston, I think, And Dan Bricklin was a kind of business student at Harvard, and he wanted to kind of do the what if calculations, kind of speciality of spreadsheets, right? And he was doing it with desktop calculators. Right? It was just crap at the time. And he had a mate who was an engineer, like you do, right? And not really a coder. And he kind of said, well, wouldn't it be cool if you could, do stuff like a matrix? And there's all, yeah. So they went away and came back, and voila, you had VisiCalc. It's called VisiCalc was the first spreadsheet, right? And then Dan was kind of like ethical person, right? And I think Bob may have said, why don't you put a patent on it? Because it's like a big innovation. He said, no, it just belongs to all of humanity. So he didn't actually slap a patent on it, right? Which is kind of unusual, right? But he did start a company at the time, right, which produced a commercial spreadsheet, and that kind of fell by the wayside because I think it got took over by IBM. And then, of course, you had, Excel popping up, etc., that kind of thing. But Dan Bricklin, right, is still around. And I think he did a TED Talk recently where he talked about, I guess, the future of spreadsheets. But going back to BitTorrent, so BitTorrent, Graham Cohen came up with it. And I'm sure that when Graham Cohen came up with the software behind BitTorrent, that it wasn't like, hey, let's come up with some cool way that we can download complete, TV series, etc., so on and so forth. It was more like a different way to share files, etc., etc. And I think that kind of took off. So BitTorrent became the way of distributing, those files through networks, and it kind of superseded stuff like Napster. Because I think Napster was the original kind of platform that kind of got sued, I think, by a band called Metallica. So I think Metallica, so kind of heavy metal band, so that we don't want to have our music being pitched, through this platform. They took it to court, and eventually, Napster was told to cease and desist, and they tried to become a commercial platform, and they kind of, failed. But around about the same time, there were a whole bunch of Napster copycats, like Rockstar, LimeWire, Kazaa, etc., and that kind of thing. Right?
So what is that US Napster.com?
That must be the commercialized version, because see, they tried to become, like iTunes. So Napster, when they were told to stop kind of allowing people to steal material online, they tried to commercialize the distribution of music, right? But they didn't do it well. It wasn't like Steve Jobs' iTunes, because I think what Steve Jobs wanted to do was to, and that's for good. Okay. Yeah. See, that's the same logo. That's the original Napster. So they're still around. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah. But if you pick up, any Wikipedia article about Napster, you will discover the history of it, which is kind of important. But if we go back to that, I just want to go back to sharing torrent free, because torrent free as a website sprang up, right? Almost to defend people's right to use BitTorrent. Right? And I think they're kind of
Torrent for many years.
yeah. So torrent free, right, is where people go to find out the latest news on issues with copyright and stuff like that. And the people that run torrent free are very much progressive and probably anti-copyright, because they think traditional forms of copyright maybe restrict creativity, etc., that kind of thing. And maybe they're of the original kind of hacker mentality from MIT, that sort. Anything that is online should be kind of free. And of course, you would probably say, if it's free, who actually pays for it in the first place? Things don't become free.
No.
From this, somebody has to put in some effort.
It's always confusing when I hear comments like, "We should make the internet free." But it can't be free, because there are cables, there are wireless connection dishes, routers, the whole bloody lot, right? Someone has to pay for it. It's not free. It's somewhere down the line we must pay for it.
Well, no, but I think when they talk about free, I think they probably think back to, say, a free-to-air TV or radio. Right? If you think about free-to-air TV or radio, and I'm talking here in Australia, because if you are in the United Kingdom, even now, people who are citizens in the UK have to get a radio and television license. Believe it or not, you have to pay. I don't know what the charge is every year, just because you have the ability to actually listen to the radio or television. And Australia had radio and TV licenses as well. For a long time, a past government kind of thought, that's crazy. Let's ban it, right? Because I think the model for free-to-air TV and the model for radio still, right, it's like the model for Google, for example. So Google, right, how is it that we can make searches willy-nilly? And it seems like fantastic, and it is, right? You don't pay for each search, right? And that's because Google's an advertising company. They always have said that, right? So in other words, they kind of use the fact that we search for things to then kind of, target ads, etc. Right? And I think that's what free-to-air radio and TV have always done. Right? They've always kind of had ad breaks and stuff like that. And even though people might say, "Oh, I hate ads on television," for example, right? If you think about it, ads on television, right, finance the production of classic works of art, right? That we still talk about. When we talk about pop culture, Star Trek, for example. I mentioned Star Trek at the start of this session, right? So Star Trek, in the '60s, CBS, came up with it, screen on TV, right? And obviously, it was shown with ad breaks and stuff like that, and then it became the stuff of popular culture, etc. And now, in the 21st century, you don't find Star Trek on free-to-air TV. I think that the current version of Star Trek, I think it's Star Trek Discovery, right, is actually on the pay-per-view channel of CBS. So what happened in the US, right, when you had cable TV coming in, right, and I think it was Bruce Springsteen wrote a song, so like 500 channels and nothing on, right? So originally there was many, many channels, right, and most of these people had to pay for, and I think there'd be a handful, maybe like 5 or 6, right, that were free. And I think that's changed even more now, because you've got Netflix instead, Showtime, HBO, etc., that kind of thing. So the landscape of how we consume entertainment, particularly video entertainment, has changed. So it's no longer that free-to-air TV is where we get the good stuff. Now comes from a lot of places where we have to pay for the content. So and then. Netflix kind of liberalized that, particularly in the US originally, because they had a very cheap subscription rate per month, right? So people thought, well, I'm only paying this much per month, so I don't need to actually download illegal things, right? Because it's so cheap, right? And then what people noticed was that the incidence of online piracy actually dipped. So when you have a lot of people using Netflix, right? Oh, that means software piracy is dead. But the issue now is there's a lot of competition to Netflix, so the Disney Channel and Amazon and stuff like that. So people, if they want to consume different products online now, they have to pay per channel, right? So what they've found now is that, piracy is kind of rising again because people can't afford to actually buy subscriptions to, Showtime, Netflix, etc., all those different things. And in particular, some people might feel irked because they would say, well, I only want to watch, there's a new series on called Raised by Wolves, Raised by Wolves, directed by Ridley Scott, who did Blade Runner and Alien, right? Science fiction, and very much about ethics and philosophy, Raised by Wolves. And it's about the future of humanity, etc., that kind of thing. The thing is, right, Raised by Wolves is like the showpiece series to launch. One of the things they're using to launch HBO Max. So HBO's home box office in the US. So home box office was one of the original ancient cable channels. Where you got Sopranos and a whole bunch of other series, etc. And now it's almost like they've spun off other channels from the original HBO. So you got HBO Max, and then HBO Max is like a premium rate. So if you want to actually watch these cool new shows, you have to pay another subscription to watch HBO Max, which is and that's kind of irritating people. But the other interesting thing about the media landscape now, right, is because you've got all these, pay-per-view networks, right? It's actually improving the quality of the product, right? So, like in the recent Emmy Awards, right, they found that most of the series, right, that were nominated for best, series, comedy, whatever that kind of thing, miniseries, right, they mainly came from pay-per-view, networks, not from, free to air. And also, even at the Academy Awards, right, Netflix had films that were nominated for Oscars, right? So, and this is kind of totally unusual because in the past there was a definite, separation between stuff that was produced for television and stuff that was produced for the cinema, right? So now it's like we're living in this convergence of media landscape where these kind of online platforms are really controlling all the entertainment. That there is no separation between TV and cinema anymore.
Yeah.
But the problem is, people have to pay for all these things, right? And once again, I don't know, Ilya. I mean, you might say a big deal, right? Because it's more like people don't have an infinite amount of time, right? So you're not going to actually have 57 subscriptions to different cable channels because you probably never have the time to watch them all, right?
It's a
And
good point because I pay for Netflix, and
yeah,
we haven't watched it easily for 2 months.
yeah,
Yeah,
hell,
and
yeah,
the only reason is because I live out in Moonbase Alpha.
yeah.
Uh, we have to watch our bandwidth usage.
Oh, okay, yeah,
So as soon as you start using things like Netflix and all that other stuff, Stan and so forth, uh,
yeah,
you, your bandwidth is like it's good if you're on unlimited, but out
yeah.
here in the bush we're not on unlimited. We've
So,
got a quota.
what about free to air TV? Can you get that?
Yeah, you'll still get that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But
and there's no.
the stuff on that is just pure rubbish, especially when especially we actually, if it's possible, I might even code out sort of get the code and actually update my TV to remove all channels starting with 2.
Wow, but the thing
Yeah,
is, what I've noticed was free to air. Free to air have even splintered their channels, right? They have extra channels now. Like Channel 9, I think, has 2 extra channels. And you mentioned Channel ABC, right? ABC also has, I think, 2 or 3. The news channel.
Channel 9 has 9, then
Yeah,
it has 90,
yeah.
91,
Anyway.
92, 93, 94, 95.
And they're all free?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And similarly, channel which used to be channel O in the old days, if you
Yeah,
remember that, for the
yeah.
guys in the audience, channel O became channel 10, right? And channel 10 now has 10, 11, 12, and all those offshoots from it as well. And channel
Yeah.
7's the same thing.
And even SBS. SBS has I think, SBS Vice, I think,
Yeah.
which is kind of like,
32, 33, all that. Yeah, and plus they also have the, how would you say, just radio as well.
you see, no, that's the other thing, right? Radio, right? If you think
Yep,
about, like, in terms of, free to air stuff, right? I mean, radio is something that's been around for decades, right? And I
yep,
think it's still going strong, and I think that, and what people don't kind of realize is that there are the same thing that's happening with television or video in terms of splintering of channels. So you have all these different new channels, right? Is also happening in the radio landscape because of digital radio. Right? Like, I mean, I've got a digital radio, right? But I never kind of bothered to change it. I always have on the same thing, the same channel, right? The same network, so to speak, right? But there are many, many, many different digital radio channels that play particular things. Some may just play all jazz music or classical, that kind of thing. So I think what's happened now is that you've got like almost an infinite amount of choice. Right? So which is kind of good or bad. In older ancient times, it was more like you didn't have much choice, right? And you had like larger audiences, right, for the few stations that were out there, right? And I guess because you had larger audiences, right, then everything was dependent on your ratings. It's like GTS score for the course coordinator, teacher, that kind of thing, right? And it's more like uh, a platform like Netflix doesn't have to worry about ratings, right? Because people pay. You pay, whatever the monthly fee is, right? And for that, you get like a lot of content, So what is important for Netflix is content, right? But not the same content. Like if Netflix just started showing Star Trek reruns back to back, right? I'm sure their subscriptions would, fall through the bottom, etc. That kind of thing, So something like a subscription service like Netflix depends on variation in content and also ability to access the back catalog, etc. That kind of thing, you know. So that's why with a Netflix, for example, it's not about TV ratings or your GTS score, right? It's more like give us something new, right? And the thing is, like Netflix has a particular kind of style, I think, in terms of its
Uh,
dramatic content.
the user interface is a little bit better than if you go to something like Stan. But even when I was working the last few years doing contracts within RMIT,
Yeah,
the staff there would actually, I'd ask them, say, oh, what do you look, what do you subscribe to, and you would get a full range of Netflix Stan, Netflix Stan, and all this other stuff, right?
yeah.
And I said, so you're telling me that you subscribe to all of them? And they said, no, only one, right? And I said, oh,
Yeah.
that's strange. Um, and the reasoning behind it is I've seen everything on Stan, so I
Mhm,
switched to Netflix. Then they
mhm.
stay with Netflix for a few months and say, oh, I've seen everything there. Then they switch back to something else. And so they keep switching between subscriptions. And
I
it's
think
very,
it's,
very rare I've actually talked to anyone which has, like 3 or 4 different subscriptions.
I think they call that churning, churning, because I think even at the start of the pandemic, there were all these articles that I found, people say, oh, now's your chance because you're in lockdown, like you've got plenty of time, right? Why don't you just try and find any of the subscription services that have like 2 weeks free viewing and just use their 2 weeks free viewing when it's over. You just cancel it, you go on to the next thing, another 2 weeks free viewing, etc. That kind of thing. I'm not
Yeah.
sure that would last as long as we've been in lockdown, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
But it's more like when I think Steve Jobs started iTunes, right? The major selling point was, okay, we'll be selling things so that we have like $1 a song, for example, because the main joke was, people would buy an album, for example, and they would say, "But I only like 2 songs, etc." But I'm paying for everything else, right? And then John says, "No, now you can kind of like just pay for what you like, $1 per song." So almost like create your own mixtape, for example. But once again, it was content, right? And I think the thing that really kind of made iTunes prominent was I think the Beatles. The Beatles that catalog kind of was finally put onto iTunes, and yes, we won, etc. That kind of thing. But I think, but I mentioned music now, right? But music's interesting as well because people would say, oh well, people illegally download music, for example, right? And it's more like who would they illegally download the most, right? And it would be like what they call dinosaur rock, right? Which is kind
Hmm.
of like the ancient musicians, Rolling Stones and Bob Dylan and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
the Beatles, etc., that kind of stuff. And it's more like, well, you're not really actually hurting them, right?
Yeah.
Because they've already made a lot of money and they're still making a lot of money because of the way their contracts, have been written in terms of, the royalties they get from music, for example. Right? So probably if you asked Mick Jagger or Bob Dylan, what are your thoughts on, online piracy? They may say, oh yeah, burn the people, etc., but we don't really care, etc., that kind of thing, because we're kind of loaded anyway, right? I think the thing is, right, most people say online piracy is bad because you may be stealing content from people who are just starting off in the business, right? But that's a kind of weird logic as well because it's more like, how do you even know who these people are? You know, so
Yeah.
it's more like I think the problem now is in the world, it's kind of difficult to become the next Beatles or Bob Dylan or whatever that kind of thing, because you need to have a lot of corporate backing to do that. To actually push through all the distractions in the media landscape today.
When you're stealing, does it really matter who you're stealing from? Like, does it matter to actually know the person or know of them?
Well, you mean, the thing is like, okay,
You know what I mean?
but I think the thing is, okay, if it's an up and coming artist, for example, right? And maybe you've heard their music on Spotify, right? And it's more like it's on Spotify. Why do you want to download it? It's on Spotify. You know what I mean? Because Spotify is kind of sort of free anyway. I mean, and this is a subscription, but it's kind of like, you know what I mean. So it's more like it's almost like greed, I think, or the need for accumulation. It's like, people compare it. I've got like 50 terabytes of music from, Bob Dylan, etc. It's more like 50 terabytes of music, right? That would take the lifespan of the universe to actually listen to. Bob didn't even write that many songs. Anyway, because it's funny, we talk about the Beatles, and I think we've been having this discussion in the Digital Ethics Club, so this is just an ad for the Digital Ethics Club for people that haven't been there lately. And I think you made a comment to the TED Talk that I put up from Ethan Hawke. You know Ethan Hawke's TED Talk on
Yep.
how to be creative, right? But first, Ilya, what did you think of that TED Talk from Ethan Hawke? Did you listen to it?
One of his advice, the one that I commented on was, he said, just to be creative, change the things you do, this sort of thing. Listen to different music. So, all right, okay, I'll do it. So I put on Chopin and listened to it, and I thought, no, no, that's not creative at all. So you really have to I just switched off, right? Because I remember I told you before I was marking how many 200 student reports. Singapore, and I thought I'll put Chopin in.
Yeah.
After spending like a week and a half marking those things, listening to Chopin, one more note of the piano, and I'll smash the piano to bits with a sledgehammer. But you lose creativity because you get mixed up in something that you're not familiar with. But you should have that. I'm talking about environments, right? So when he says you should be in different environments and stuff, I understand if you're looking for something new, but music and so forth, that's not. I disagree with that. It takes you off your perspective.
Well, but see, the thing is, like, if you think about music, right? Music has a structure, right? Like language has a structure, like natural language has a structure. So, like natural language, the English that we're speaking now, has syntax and semantics, right? And you can express it in writing, and the same applies to music. It's got, perhaps more of a, organized structure than natural language. There's a special way you codify it, and etc. And I think, to me, and I've been thinking about this for a long time, on and off, right? Because in my PhD thesis, because I was looking at color categorization, right, and the underpinning of all that, right, is looking at the nature of language, right? And there's this idea that linguists have been throwing around for a long time about the relationship between language and thought. Does language influence or determine the way we think? And that means that language is actually a form of thinking, in a sense, And people have kind of all these kind of weird theories, right? And people are kind of violently opposed to it. Oh no, of course language, doesn't influence the way people think, because that would mean that maybe there are some languages that have, more power than other languages. And people would say, English is better than Russian, or English is better than, Slovakian, etc., that kind of thing. And the kind of a language influences thought mob would say, that, every concept can be translated into any language, but the thing is, that's about thought. Does language influence the way that people think? But I've always thought, well, maybe music is something that influences the way we feel. Like if people have said, does language influence the way we think or determine the way we think? Maybe music influences the way we feel, because music could be a different kind of language. So it's not a natural language in terms of speech or writing, right? But it's a language of feeling. You know, and if we say, okay, what does it mean to be creative, right? And it's like, wow, that's a really tough question. What does it actually mean to be creative, right? And I like to, and I said that in the post. Right? I said, well, if your cat, spontaneously built a termite mound in your backyard, right, in your 4,000 acres, right, a huge termite mound, you'd probably think, this is really creepy. My cat's really small, and there's this huge kind of like termite mound. And it's more like, well, that means my cat must be very creative. But like, if you then went in the backyard and there was a huge termite mound that was actually created by termites, you wouldn't say, oh, the termites are really creative. Right? Because termites are kind of conditioned or through instinct, evolved to create these things called termite mounds. So are we as humans then also through evolution, designed to create, I don't know, great pieces of music like Beethoven's Fifth Symphony or the Taj Mahal, or, etc., that kind of thing. Right? I think these things that humans do are the equivalent of like your cat creating, a termite mound in the backyard. It's something that you don't have to do. Like I always say to you, finish your PhD, and it's more like nobody has to do a PhD, right? You do a PhD because you want to do a PhD. So to me, a PhD is or should be the epitome of creativity, right? Because no one in their right mind would ever want to do a PhD, right? Somebody, right? You know what I mean? So it's more like, if you went to a plumber and said, oh, well, go on, right? Build a Taj Mahal, right? And they would say, some rude word to me that a Viking would have said to me, off, that kind of thing, right? Because that's ridiculous, right? But somebody designed the Taj Mahal or the pyramids, or that painted the Mona Lisa, etc., that kind of thing. Mind you, Leonardo da Vinci was actually more like us or more like you, right? Because Leonardo da Vinci was actually a paid for doing things type person. He was a professional in a sense, like you, art, work, etc. I mean, like an artist is more like, the kind of romantic version of the artist, like starving to death, eating baked beans, living from grout to grout, etc. I don't think Leo actually lived like that during the Renaissance in Florence, right? Because you had, this rich dude that was kind of the patron of the arts, right? That kind of, patted Michelangelo on the head and said, "You're great. Go and build, St. Peter's Basilica, etc. And give it a paint job, etc." That kind of thing, right? So if you have rich benefactors, then you could do great things. If they're kind of liberal in that respect, so they don't just think about making money for money's sake, but the fact that greatness also comes from the memory of greatness. You see, that's the thing, And because we've been having this discussion on and off, right? You have had in the past told me about colleagues, right, in places that you work that were just concerned about making money. Right? And the thing is, right, in the past, if you look at human history, there were also people that were just concerned about making money. Now, usually the making of money was equated with, can this make me great? If you just have money, right, it's not going to make you great. I mean, it could make you great.
I'll give you a little bit of a story. In my professional career, earlier on, it was always told my father, he was very high up in management in Dunlop Olympic Tyres, VF Goodrich, tyre factories. And he said, listen, if you really want to make something of yourself, you have to stay in a business for X amount of time and then make a decision after, and I'm not going to tell people the actual time, but you have to learn that for yourself. So uh, what what I did when I began in industry is I was determined I'm going to stay here. I'm going to and I actually said this is where I want to get to. Right, and it was even before I sort of like actually walked into the premises. I said I want to be at this level in X amount of years. So I set myself a goal.
Yeah.
You know, the guys I started with, and even my friends from university, majority of them were always money hungry. And for myself, from what my father told me, and it was really good advice, was don't chase the dollar, make sure the dollar chases you. Right?
Ah,
And and I can actually confidently say all of my friends, all they did were chase the dollar. Up to several of my close colleagues, they didn't work at the same premises as I did. One did, uh, but what they would do is they would continually jump from job to job trying to find better pay. Right?
okay.
And what actually happens is at that level, I thought, Chris, what are you doing like this? And every 6 months or so, he'd be in another job, and he'd end up with this huge resume of all these places that he's been working at, right? Which eventually actually becomes a negative thing, and I'll explain that in a second. But by chasing that dollar, well, personally, I found was all of my friends ended up on a lot less eventually than I did, right? In terms of money. And I'm not sure whether it's really a bit of benefit to change job. Here's the reason: because when I actually got into management level, where I was employing staff, right, and then eventually my staff were employing staff, um, like when a resume came across the desk and you could see like, oh, this guy just stays in jobs every year, he seems to be skipping,
Yeah.
you just throw it in the bin. So in a way, chasing the dollar by chop and chain through jobs is actually a really negative thing. Yeah.
So it's almost like the discussion that we had just before about people chopping between Netflix and Stan and HBO, etc. Yeah.
It, it,
Rather than
it,
kind of maintaining loyalty to one particular platform or job.
yeah.
Yeah.
But here's the other thing, right?
Yeah.
Is uh, uh, you just said it, keyword loyalty. Loyalty,
Loyalty.
loyalty here's a life lesson.
Yeah.
Loyalty can be abused,
Yeah.
big time. Yeah.
How do you abuse loyalty?
From management point of view, you think, Fred's been here for 15 years, and
Okay.
you can push the limits.
Yeah.
So you can say, oh, listen, this year you're only getting a 1.5% increase. Well, so then you can take some of that cash and give it to someone else. I don't know. Anyway, yeah,
Do you
it's
think
hard.
loyalty is still important in the world today? Do you think loyalty is still a value in the
Well,
world?
for instance, if you have a mortgage and you have a bank account and so forth, banks actually, because I know friends, banks actually consider loyalty as I wouldn't say negative, but they actually look at it and saying, they can abuse it.
But don't banks or finance companies have their own loyalty, like your credit rating as an individual, right?
Yeah,
Like if you
correct.
want to actually get a loan, for example, right? If
Yeah,
somebody rings up some nebulous agency and they
yeah.
say, this person's got a credit rating of 57, etc., give him whatever he wants.
I mean,
Instantly screwed anything.
in terms of loyalty, banks
Yeah.
have a loyalty to new customers more than the priority is new customers,
Oh,
not
yeah,
existing.
yeah, yeah. Probably. They always want to actually, what is
If
it?
you're loyal to the bank, they'll abuse it. They'll yeah, you'll get screwed somewhere along the line.
always be closing because banks are basically in the business of selling things, right?
They need new customers, yeah. So they're
Yeah.
loyal more to new customers, people that are outside walking on the street rather than the ones that are sitting inside the office with, hundreds of thousands already in the bank.
Mhm. Yeah.
And the other thing which might be interesting because some of the students will probably purchase things when you get your mortgage and so forth. If you pay it out early, you'll actually find that your credit rating goes through the floor.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is a real, because I even asked my son, I said, what do you think if you went to the bank and you got yourself, $100,000 loan and you paid it off in 3 months instead of, 5 years? Do you think the bank would be, pleased about it? No, they're not.
So in other words, you're telling me, I should go out and get a huge loan, just be in debt.
Well, that's one of the tests. Actually, that's one of my personal tests is
Yeah.
how much are you really worth, right? And
Yeah.
when I ask people, I say, how much are you really worth, right? Because
Yeah.
a lot of people just have all these liquid assets and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
A good test is actually go into the bank, right, and see how much you can, what's your max that you can actually loan out of a bank.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
do the test. Yeah.
Do you do that often? Do you just go to a bank and say, "Can you give me $5 million?" Right? Yeah.
I used to the last
You used to.
yeah, I'd go every like 3-4 years.
Yeah.
But last one, which is about 2000, 2003, I think, 2003, I could get 2.5 mil.
You're just showing off now, with you?
No, it shows you what's your net worth, right? It shows
Oh,
you
okay.
just. So,
Yeah.
but that's like you walk in a bank and actually you have to show them everything that you've got. And it doesn't mean that you've got that money in the bank, but because they will test things like, are you skilled enough? Can you actually pay the stuff off? And, are you, what's your credit rating now? What are your current assets and so forth? So they'll put a big picture in. You'll get a nice clean figure of what you're really worth, right? Yeah.
Is this like the kind of ancient times when the employment market was a little bit better than it is now, and some people would just be applying for jobs, not because they wanted jobs, just to see how many interviews they get, and if they'd actually get the job, and then they turn it down. Have you ever
Well,
seen people doing that?
that's another point is
Yeah.
when you actually are in a position somewhere, don't stop doing interviews. You should still go out every 6 months and actually go and do interviews at other corporations. And
You did that as well. So you
it's
did that as well when you.
I didn't, but don't stop. It's just advice from like friends as well. Is because you keep yourself into what is the requirement for the market.
Well,
You don't want to get stale.
see, the thing is, apparently they say, right, and this is kind of when the employment market was a little bit better than it is now because now we're in COVID, la la land, etc., that kind of thing. But in normal times, right, it was kind of easier for people to do that if they already had a job. So if you have a job, right, then it's kind of a lot easier to actually kind of apply for a job and get an interview. So people would kind of be doing that. Some people would be doing that all the time, right? Just to kind of test, what am I actually worth? Whereas if you're kind of out of work, it's harder to do that.
Yeah,
If
yeah,
you,
but by doing that, by going to interviews,
yeah.
you actually feel the market. What is the new requirement? What are they all? What's the most popular thing out there at the moment? So forth in your
But,
field.
but you know
Yeah.
what would be good because you know how.
But
Yeah,
I've got to say it again. I didn't do that. I didn't.
yeah, because
I think I've only done 2 interviews. That's it.
but see, the thing is, right, what would be good, right? Because you know how we were talking about credit ratings, right? So somehow there's some agency somewhere, Standard and Poor's or whatever, that kind of thing, right? That keeps a number for all of us, right? So that if we ever get a loan or something, just ring up and they say, oh well, Ilya has a credit rating of 42, whatever that is, right? But wouldn't it be cool, right? if we could have the same kind of rating based on the number of job interviews that we go to. You know what I mean? So in other words, if you had a job, right, and you were kind of kicking tires, as I said, like every time you go to a job interview, and you get a rating from some agency based on the output of that job interview, and then that would give you an overall kind of score. So then
That'd be good. That way, it would have stopped me having to interview people, because I interviewed hundreds of people.
Yeah.
But one thing about that, I did work for Dun and Bradstreet.
Yeah.
I'm not sure whether you're familiar with them. They're hugely
Is that like a management consultancy or a finance company?
finances. They're huge.
Like accounting? Is that like an accounting?
In finance, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, the story behind it, I actually did a contract for them, and I got access, and this is unethical in a way, right?
Yeah.
I got access to their databases, right?
Yeah.
And I just, as a sneak, I thought, I wonder what they've got on me.
Yeah.
So I actually did a search for myself. You would not believe the information that they had on me, the things that I didn't even know. Right? They had and so forth from me for going back like bloody decades. It's unbelievable. Yeah.
It wasn't like personal stuff, right?
No, financial transactions.
Yeah. I imagine have like your shoe size and stuff like that.
Basically, what I own and what I bought and all this, unbelievable. It's huge data, and you wouldn't believe it, right? Yeah. And people keep telling you, privacy.
Because we're talking about privacy now, this kind of crossed my radar as well the other day. Maybe you saw it.
Have a look at my avatar. I just updated it.
I know, I saw it. Yeah.
Just pop up myself.
A data breach at University of Tasmania affects 20,000 students. So apparently, what happened is that if you, University of Tasmania has had to contact almost 20,000 students after their personal information was accidentally made accessible to all users with a UTAS email address. So anybody with a UTAS email address could access the personal information of all of the students at University of Tasmania, which is kind of like the key.
Things like.
And it was because, and it's the same problem we have at RMIT now, because we're migrating to SharePoint, I think, so which is a big thing. Apparently, I don't know, everything has to go to OneDrive and SharePoint. SharePoint's owned by Microsoft, etc. So SharePoint's going to be for official, university documentation that can be shared by all admin and academic staff. And I think then OneDrive is for individual data repositories. And I think that was the problem here. It was more like, the SharePoint was meant to actually be for the student data for just admin. But according to this glitch, it meant anybody with a UTAS email address could access that SharePoint. So that's the problem with the cloud, I think. You have these kind of strange things happening, I just saw that headline there. Why do some international students fake their kidnapping to trick their own parents? You see, and that's the wonderful thing about the internet. You see these weird things, and all of a sudden you go down a rabbit hole. I need to look at that later. It's fascinating. Like faking your own kidnapping. That sounds like a Netflix film. You know what the formula is on Netflix? If you
No.
It's interesting. You see what I mean? You're right. You see, maybe we should actually read the article. Faking your own kidnapping. I mean, the problem with doing that kind of stuff, faking a kidnapping, is what if somehow something happens to you? You know what I mean? Like, you've seen that movie Capricorn 1, Ilya?
Yes, the space thing. Yeah.
Space thing. Well, Capricorn 1, right, is feeding to that myth that nobody ever landed on the moon. The kind of myth of the moon landing, because the myth is. The myth is that Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin didn't walk on the moon, right? They were actually actors, right? And that the whole thing was actually staged by Stanley Kubrick. because they said that Stanley Kubrick did 2001 fantastic special effects for that time, right? Because 2001 was like 1968, right? And I think Moon Landing was 69, etc. That kind of thing. And then I have read articles where Buzz Aldrin, because he's still around, I think he's in his 90s, right? And once a journalist who was a moon landing skeptic actually said that to him. Was it fake, right? And Buzz just punched him in the face. He just knocked him out. Because Buzz is a take no prisoners kind of guy, right? I went to a Q&A with him, right? Here in Melbourne, the town hall a couple of years ago, right? And he's an academic. He's got a PhD. I mean, before I went to his talk, right, I downloaded his PhD. But his PhD seems almost like something you would write, Bill, because Buzz is an engineer. So it's like no bullshit, no theory, that kind of thing, just the facts, etc. And that's the kind of person he was. He presented. So it was kind of totally believable when I read, the journalist said, moon landing was fake. I was just, decked that kind of thing, but that session with Buzz Aldrin was interesting because there were a whole bunch of people there lining up to asking questions, right? And Buzz at the time was some advisor on a NASA project because NASA wanted to launch manned probes to Mars at the time, right? So they got Buzz Aldrin in to be a consultant, right? So he was talking mainly about that, right? And then one person in the audience, right? She was a student of science, I think, here in Melbourne, right? And I think she kind of volunteered. She said, because, if you go on a Mars mission, it would take like years to go there. And she said she would happily do that, right? And that kind of gobsmacked the person that was hosting the session. Who was it called? The guy, the TV news guy from Channel 9 or whatever, right? He thought, like, you'd give up, like, years of your life just to be on a spaceship to Mars, etc. That kind of thing was more like, wow, that's really dedication or stupidity. You know what I mean? He wasn't for whether to praise her or whatever, that kind of thing, Because that's the thing, you go on these long haul space flights, it would take like years and years, etc. It's not like Interstellar, where you're in suspended animation, but it's still taking a large chunk out of your life. But that's fascinating. Right? But yeah, the thing about Capricorn 1, right? Because we were talking about that thing that I saw, about the international students faking their kidnapping, right? And I'm always thinking, like, what if things go wrong? Because, like, in the film Capricorn 1, they have this scenario where they pretend that they're going to Mars, right? And so they're out on the stage, right? And then they kind of, tell the astronauts who are on this mission that, there's budget cuts, etc., so we have to actually stage it. But you guys will just be here on the secret base, etc. But what happens when the kind of the probe, right, that they have like a fake probe coming back, it explodes. Yeah? So everybody sees, the probe blew up. That means our astronauts died, but they're not really dead because they're still in the base. So then the astronauts kind of realize, hey, we're expendable. They're going to have to bump us off the kind of escape. Whatever that kind of. So in other words, right, if you go to fake your own kidnapping, something like that might happen to you. So don't do it, kids. Right? Never fake your own kidnapping. Right? That's the lesson. That's the lesson for today. I'll get back to our topic of online piracy soon, but I just wanted to actually share a little thing here because in lockdown I've been doing a bit of reading and watching, and there's a science fiction author called Theodore Sturgeon. And Theodore Sturgeon wrote many short stories and many books. And he also wrote 2 episodes of the original Star Trek series, right? But he's an interesting person because there's actually a couple of laws or revelations named after him. Sturgeon's Law, they call it. And there's actually 2 variations of Sturgeon's Law, and I don't know if you could read that, but that's the one that most people talk about, Sturgeon's Law. 90% of everything is crap. So, so Ilya, do you think that's true? You know,
No.
because this is like the 80-20 rule. There's something called the Pareto principle, right? The Pareto principle comes from statistics, right? And there's like, in life, there are usually patterns, right? And they're kind of split into 80-20. So people might say 20% of everything is crap, right? And 80% of everything is good. But Sturgeon said 90% of everything is crap. So it's more like an inverted iceberg. You know, like with an iceberg, like there's a, you know, a little bit that sticks out and everything's at the bottom. The Sturgeon would say, that's the good stuff that sticks out. Everything else is crap. Right? But the other one that was actually interesting that I came across, right, was this one, a variation. Nothing is always absolutely so.
Yeah.
So in other words, right, I think 90% of everything is crap is Sturgeon's revelation. So maybe one day, while in his writing, he said, I had a vision, I had a revelation. 90% of everything is crap, right? But you said something interesting earlier, right? You said most of what is on free-to-air TV is crap. Am I correct?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe 90% of everything on free-to-air TV is crap. Yes?
Yeah. My personal opinion would be the other way around. I think there's 10% is
So that's Ilya's law. Then an Narnia principle, 10% of everything is crap. Okay.
I would reverse that. I would reverse that. I'd
Maybe
say
we should have a vote.
90%, that's a lot.
Yeah, but wait a minute, hold on. Let me think about this as a person that's supposed to be giving out marks, and so are you. Ilya. When you give out marks, right? And people would normally expect an HD or a distinction. Like that's the thing that people aim for. But the thing is, like, if if everybody were to get a HD, for example, then HD wouldn't mean anything. Am I correct?
Yeah, I agree with that. But
Oh, you agree with that? Okay.
yeah, but to actually say 90% of things that like everything that I've ever done, 90% was crap. No.
But that's more like an insult to you, right? Am I correct? Because if you actually accept that, that also applies to you.
I couldn't accept it. It's like even the journey through the crap, because remember one of the golden rules in industry, you have to do the crap to get to the good stuff, right? So you actually have to go through the shit to get to the good stuff, right?
You know, that's my adage, right? Corner.
But that 90% of shit is actually a learning curve. You learn a lot, so it's not really crap.
Oh, wait a minute, that's a revelation too. According to what you just said, Ilya, that means shit is a learning experience?
Oh yeah, big time. Yeah.
Ah, okay. So maybe that's an RDS law. Shit is a learning experience.
It doesn't just happen; it has to happen.
Ah, as we know in real life.
Mandatory. Yeah.
Anyway,
You can't learn if you haven't made mistakes and so forth. So you have to see.
but that's mistakes. So, Ilya, would you say that mistakes are shit?
No, I think they're important, very important.
Because I think that's what Confucius actually had as one of his quotes. It was something like "make spectacular mistakes" or something like that. Yeah. So if you do make a mistake, right, make sure it's a grand mistake. Because often people might make a mistake, and I don't know. Give me an example of a mistake, Ilya, a classic mistake. That's not a great mistake, but like a simple mistake, like a common mistake.
I'll give you my biggest mistake in my life was when my mentor, Japanese Shiroki Sakai, came through the office, and he threw this piece of paper on my desk.
Ah, yes.
And you know the story. And he threw the piece of paper on the desk, and the piece of paper came from the office in Japan, and it was Google looking for funds as a startup. Right? And I looked at it, and I just said to myself, I said, "What the hell do you need to do with a search engine?" Had absolutely no vision, right? but the strange thing was this paper had actually gone from MD, CEO, all the way down to me at that stage. I was only a lowly section manager.
Yeah.
Yeah, and at that stage, and all I had to do was just put like $1,000 in as a startup, and we would have been off. But they were actually going to major corporates looking for funding to start up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was before it was floated on the market and all the rest.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those sort of mistakes, you learn from them. You think, hang on, don't just put things aside thinking, oh, it's stupid. Have a look at them twice. Yeah.
But that's not necessarily crap. That's more like, I mean, the thing is, that mistake didn't really directly affect your life. You know what I mean? Like,
No,
it's more like,
it could have affected it big time.
well, in a positive way. In other words, if you had invested, right, and now we wouldn't be talking to you, you know, because you would be somewhere on a wall, you know, your picture, you know, investor number 23, except for that kind of stuff. And yeah.
It would have been a big thing to actually, as a corporate, take them on.
Yeah, that would be good. That would have been.
That would have been so many, especially in my area, like my staff. It would have affected them big time. Right? So my silly, you know, like it's really a silly decision on behalf of my staff because they never actually knew.
So in retrospect, does that mean your experience not buying shares in Google means that you are now open to everything?
No. But like I said, don't discount things. Always have a second look.
Have an open mind, in other words, right? Am I correct? Have an open mind.
Always have a second look.
Yes. Yeah, but look at the revelation. 90% of everything is crap. I mean, the thing is, to me, maybe that's more like indicative of Theodore Sturgeon's personality, right? Because some people might think, if that's your philosophy in life, or that's your law in life, or maxim, right, then you must be a pretty depressing person, right? Because it's like the glass half full, glass half empty. Are you a pessimist or an optimist? That law means pessimism. That's pessimism on steroids, right? But the law, right, the other law that he has is nothing is always absolutely so.
Yeah.
Nothing is always absolutely so. What do you think that means, Ilya?
For me, through our industry, when we had new products coming along, or let's say we had to modify for a user requirement because the requirement looked too hard, right? And I can confidently say now, you can do anything in software.
Anything. Okay.
Yeah. And I can confidently say, because even with the software, I can go off to a specialist, get the hardware modified to suit my software.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where in the old days it used to be, there's a limitation in the hardware, right? And we can't do this, we can't do that. And, it's not possible. And the worst comment used to be, that's impossible. But no, it's not. Nothing is impossible.
Oh, nothing is impossible. Cool.
I don't think it is. I think you can always achieve anything you like.
That's optimism, Ilya. I mean, I think if you go back to his law, nothing is always absolutely so. It means that probably you can't always accept something as being unchangeable. You know, that anything can be twisted or modified or whatever. It's a little bit more open, I think, then you can do anything with software. I think that kind of also applies to kind of life in general. Maybe nothing is always absolutely so is pretty much just the nature of evolution. Things evolve because survival of the fittest, and so forth, and that kind of thing. So we adapt. It's about adaptability. I think that's what that statement is about. So it's not like you kind of are in life, and you're kind of walking along, and all of a sudden you hit a roadblock, and you say, "That's it, I can't go any further. Right? I just have to go back, etc." You just kind of try again. Right? So
Just
maybe
just don't watch Big Brother, because Big Brother, if you are the strongest or the one in charge or so forth, you're the one that first leaves the house. I don't think it's true in real life.
it's good that you mentioned Big Brother earlier, because I think, was it last week that we were talking about privacy, right? And when people use that term Big Brother, they're just thinking about that crappy TV show, right?
Yeah,
And then a couple of people that kind of got, actual high-paying jobs from being Big Brother contestants, right? They say, "Oh, these people are really talented," right?
yeah,
And it's more like, well, I think they're talented in the sense that they are extroverts. They're kind of outgoing, etc. Because maybe that's what you have to be
yeah,
in order to survive and do well on a show like Big Brother. But the concept of Big Brother goes back to George Orwell's book, 1984, constantly being watched, right? And people back then thought it was a bad thing, right? And now with
yeah,
Big Brother, hey, it's cool. We're kind of eavesdropping on people. But, and are these people actually interesting? Not really, right? Because it's more like they're people that you wouldn't want to actually eavesdrop, in real life, because it's interesting to me what Big Brother should be, or could be, or can be. It should be like an intellectual Big Brother. Can you imagine if you had, like really smart people in a house, right? And you kind of, actually could eavesdrop on intelligent conversation, and
yeah,
and then kind of, but it's not just intelligent conversation, but them also being emotional. So because intelligent people can be emotional, they can shout, swear, etc., and fight, right? But they can still be intelligent while they do it. It's like I think that would be cool. I would watch that. Definitely. But not,
so rather than having physical challenges, it'll all be mental work. Calculate this. Who knows this theory? Actually, that's a good idea. Why don't we an assessment for the students? We lock the students up.
what? Oh yes, we pretend that there's a virus.
Do a RMIT Ethics Big Brother.
I don't know TV, brother. Well, no, because the thing is, right, okay, let me just kind of riff on that Big Brother thing, right? I mean, Big Brother, right, is people in lockdown, right? But they choose to be in lockdown, right? Because they have cameras on them recording what they do, etc., that kind of thing, right? And they're
Yeah,
just being who they are. But in academia, and maybe even in industry, but in academia, certainly, there's this concept of a retreat. So in past years, right, we were still on campus, right, and we had money, right? Every year there'd be a retreat. So what a retreat is in academia is for 2 days, right? Academics go off, and it's usually like some resort, like a golf course or
yeah,
someplace, and we stay in the resort overnight, right? And then there's kind of like meetings or workshops on those 2 days, right? And people coming in, giving talks, break up groups, discuss things, etc., that kind of thing. And then after the meetings, then maybe we do stuff, whatever, play volleyball, whatever, that kind of thing, right? But see, like originally when the concept of retreat started, when I was going to originally here at RMIT, it'd be more like the first day would be like bonding exercises. So we'd get somebody in
yeah,
who would try to give us pep talks and give us like focus exercises to have us bond as academic staff. So I remember one session that we went to, the guy came in, right, and he dressed like Gandhi. He had a dhoti, that kind of wraparound cloth, right? And then he gave us all these kind of bogus. And what I remember bogus exercise was, just go up to a random person, right, and tell them one thing that you like about them. Right? That was it. Yeah. And then the other thing that he did, right, when he was dressed up as Gandhi, is he showed an excerpt from a documentary about a book called The Secret. So I don't know if you know the book The Secret, Julia, but The
no,
Secret,
you don't know. Yeah, go.
some Australian TV personality writer wrote this book called The Secret, and couched it in kind of ancient mythology and little bit of history, right? And basically, what the secret is, spoiler alert, right? The secret is if you actually really want something, if you really, really want something, really, really want something, you'll get it.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the secret. That's the secret, basically. So I told, so that was it. It was more like he showed us half an hour of that documentary about the secret, right? About how that person made so much money, basically saying if you want something, you'll get it, right? And then we had a break, right? When we came back, instead of him being dressed up as Gandhi, he dressed up like Rambo, like flat gear, camouflage, painted, and he was totally different. So it was kind of like that's the, and that was kind of one example of a retreat. And then we had individual meetings. So it's basically being locked away, right? And that was the philosophy behind retreats. It was more like when we're actually in the university building, we're distracted, phone calls, meetings, etc. If we're at a golf course resort, there's no place else to go because we can't go sightseeing. It's a golf course, right?
Yeah.
So you have to be kind of trapped there, engaged in things. And I think a lot of people hated that eventually, right? Because they thought it was kind of a waste of time, which it kind of was, right? Because once again, right, to me, it almost became like the academic version of Big Brother, right? Rather than us kind of actually grasping and with ideas, right? We ended up just kind of, going around in circles, in meetings with no output and things like that, rather than kind of trying to really talk about interesting things. So, but yeah.
Do you really honestly believe that if you really, really believe that you want to get something, that you'll get it?
Well, I think the thing is that person that wrote the book, right, made a heap of money. Well, it certainly worked for her, right? But I think I'm trying to. Well, no, look. You must have heard of stories, right? And these, like, mind you, celebrities already, right? That said, things like, well, how did you pair up with this woman, man, etc., that kind of thing. And it's more like, well, I just, fell in love with her, and I thought I had to be with her, him, that kind of thing, right? And then they end up together. And it's usually that. Well, I'm trying to think of one example. Chris Christopherson, I think. Chris Christopherson is an actor and a musician, right? And I think one of his partners was Rita Coolidge, right? And I think he once described, well, how did he kind of, marry, partner up with Rita Coolidge, right? And it was basically, I think they professionals already, both were singers, right? But they kind of met each other just spontaneously at random at an airport somewhere, right? Lounge, right? And she went off her way, he went off his way. In that meeting, he kind of fell in love and just kind of, didn't go on his flight and basically stalked her. See what I mean? So it's more like, okay, it may have worked for Chris Christopherson because he's Chris Christopherson, right? But it wouldn't work for an ordinary schlep off the street. That person would just be a stalker. So it's not like, if you really want something, you'll get it. It's more like, if you really want something and you're Chris Christopherson, you'll get it.
I'd add that you really have to work hard for what you want.
Yeah, true, yeah. I'm just trying to read out that page with the secret just to show you. It's still actually making money for that person. Yeah. I think here it is. I think, yeah. Yeah, the secret store. It's still open. So,
I really think if you really, really want something, you have to work and earn to get it. Yeah, it's not just.
As you travel through these pages and you learn the secret, you will come to know that you can have, be, or do anything you want. You will come to know who you really are. You will come to know the true magnificence that awaits you. So it's very kind of mystical and kind of supernatural, but still, couched as business. Because see, like they have free apps, they have the movie you can watch. There's even like a movie, with Hollywood stars in it, right? So it's
actually making quite a bit of money off this. And if you think about it, it's all ethical. ethics based, the entire thing. Like, it really goes down to the bare essence of emotions, doesn't it?
But the thing is, if you kind of look at even their blurbs, like the mission statement, here it is. The mission of The Secret is to bring joy to billions. Our philosophy and vision of The Secret is to bring joy to billions, to bring joy to the world. We create life-transforming tools in the mediums of books, films, and multimedia. With each creation from The Secret, it's like it's almost like a cult, but it's not complex enough to be a cult because basically,
I love that our vision is to bring joy to billions, right? Because you understand.
because billions will give you billions of dollars.
They will return joy in kind.
Can you imagine, right? If you have a billion people that are following you, and even if each person just gave you $1, you'd be a billion. You know what I mean? Or less. I mean, it's like, I'm just trying to kind of explore.
Take half of it.
So is that the way the government should actually be trying to inspire Australians? Be very vague and talk about.
I have a very silly method of taxing people. The harder you work, the more tax you pay.
So you've got a better way of taxing people, you know?
Well, it should be flat rate tax. Everybody earns, etc. And if you earn more, like if you do 20 hours and I only do 2 hours, well, okay, fair enough. But I shouldn't be penalised for doing my 20 hours.
Okay. Yep. Okay, so this is a Wikipedia article on The Secret. The Secret is a 2006 self-help book by Rhonda Byrne, based on the earlier film of the same name. It is based. So that was the film that we saw at the retreat. It is based on the belief of the law of attraction, which claims that thoughts can change a person's life directly. See, thoughts, meaning like if you want something, it will change your life. So this is kind of like before when I was talking about that idea from linguistics. Does language influence the way people think? But I think the law of attraction is a more kind of mystical, supernatural thing, that your thoughts can actually affect your life in a direct way. And apparently it did actually affect Rhonda Byrne's life because the book has sold 30 million copies worldwide and has been translated into 50 languages.
There comes the begin. Yeah.
I'm just trying to, let me indulge with the law of attraction, right? So what is the law of attraction, right? Is the belief that positive or negative thoughts bring positive or negative experiences into a person's life. Gee whiz, that's really obvious, right?
Yeah.
Don't you think that? The belief is based on the ideas that people and their thoughts are made from pure energy, and that a process of like energy attracting like energy exists through which a person can improve their health, wealth, and personal relationships. There is no empirical scientific evidence supporting the law of attraction. Yeah. And I think this actually goes all the way back to Isaac Newton, I think, if I'm true. I think Isaac may have actually dabbled in this because he had his foot in most camps, being a physicist and a kind of sorcerer, I think. But yeah, strange things. So Ilya, back to
piracy.
Right? I just wanted to show people once again the kind of news bulletins, right, in Torrent Free, just to show what the current gossip is about copyright law and piracy. So, if we look at the current headlines, Samsung faces 1.3 million lawsuit over Synavia anti-piracy tech licensing agreements. And I think the earlier article there was about YouTube. So YouTube copyright law suit plaintiff uploaded own movies and claim mass infringement. Because YouTube is interesting, right? I mean, YouTube probably gobbles up a lot of bandwidth on the internet worldwide. Am I correct, Louis? Or is it kind of not a big goblet of bandwidth at the moment, considering we got Netflix and all the other.
I couldn't tell you. I really couldn't tell you how much it's. Yeah.
Because I think it used to be kind of like almost like a rule of thumb, right? That most of the bandwidth on the internet was either due to Facebook or YouTube, you know. And I think with YouTube, the kind of motto of YouTube was, broadcast yourself. And I think the people who originally came up with the concept of YouTube, it was kind of like, well, this could be a platform where people could become their own, I guess, television stations. They could broadcast content. And
I can confidently tell you here in our premises here, Snapchat outdoes everything all in bulk.
yeah,
If you added up Twitter, YouTube, the gaming, some going on Netflix or the rest, Snapchat outdoes it hands down. As soon as one of my kids gets on Snapchat, I've actually told them to remove it.
yeah,
As soon as they got onto it, the network traffic would just go bang right up to maximum, and the amount of data that really chews up is just phenomenal. And that's just Snapchat. So.
But Snapchat is video primarily.
So if you've got a problem at home and you've got Snapchat somewhere on your machine and the machine's logged on, you don't even have to be using Snapchat. You'll see your bandwidth.
Yeah.
Snapchat.
I mean, but the thing is, like, with the people, I mean, with your kids, sharing stuff on Snapchat, would they be just creating their own content, or would they be sharing, other videos?
With their friends, they keep looking at their content. Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. Because I've got something else here, which
that heavy on our side. No.
as well, and this may be kind of dead in the water. I don't know if people are still fans of Instagram. So I just saw it the other day on the Guardian site. It was an article that was celebrating the 10th anniversary of Instagram. How sharing photos has entertained us, upset us, and changed our sense of self. Because what was the other thing that I shared on the Digital Ethics Club? Kim Kardashian, I think. And said, okay, she's going to protest against something by not posting anything on her YouTube site and on Instagram for a day. And then you said, who's Kim Kardashian, right? And then I had to respond by saying that Kim Kardashian actually broke the internet, I think. And you know why Kim Kardashian broke the internet? Do you? So I just tried to you kind of get your foot in it for a change, right? I'm trying to find the correct word for it in Slovakian, right? What? Okay, let me just wait. I'm just trying to use I'm just trying to entertain yourselves while I'm trying to use Google Translate to find the Slovak terms. Okay, let me see. Okay. Okay, here it is, yeah. Okay, this is how Kim Kardashian broke the internet. It's actually, yeah, I mean, she used that to break the internet. So apologies to anybody that knows Slovakian. But that's how she did it, right? Anyhow, I think Kim Kardashian's an average fan of Instagram, and other platforms, no doubt. So she's actually kind of almost a one-person broadcaster as well. Right? But the thing is, if you look at Kim Kardashian, right, you would say, what is she famous for? Right? I mean, did she find a cure for cancer? No. Is she a great writer, a comedian? No. She's famous for being Kim Kardashian, right? And maybe that word in Slovakian that I just shared, etc. But she, she, she's famous for being famous, right? And that's the unusual thing of the kind of latter part of the 20th century and now the 21st century, right? Is the power of celebrity. So if we go back 100 years, right, there was really no such thing as the kind of celebrity cult that exists today. Right? I mean, say the 1920s, for example, right? I mean, there were people who were famous, right? But they were usually famous because they actually did things, right? It wasn't that you actually, became famous because you could promote yourself using some kind of platform like you can nowadays. And because you have a celebrity culture existing today, it's actually changed a lot of things in life. So I have read articles and surveys where they had, I don't know, asked kids in primary school or in high school, what do you want to be when you grow up? And often the response might be, I want to be famous. I mean, like Ilya, have any of your children ever said that? The aspiration in life is to actually be famous.
And definitely not, I want to be Kim. No.
Well, no, I don't think I would say I want to be Kim Kardashian because it's more like, well, obviously, you can't be Kim Kardashian. There's only one Kim Kardashian. It'd be some freaky science fiction series, like like a Frankenstein monster kind of thing. Kim Kardashian, right, and then have some kind of helmet on her head, right, and her thoughts are transferred into another body, and all of a sudden, the Kardashian-Stein, etc., that kind of thing, right? It's more like Kim Kardashian then inspires people to be like Kim Kardashian. It's the cult of the Kardashians. Well, what was that TV show that they had? She had her family had a Keeping Up with the Kardashians, right? So last week, right, it was on news bulletins, right? They said the Keeping Up with Kardashians has been cancelled, right? It's like, who cares? Right? And one person said, I never watched it. What's Keeping Up with Kardashians, right? There were 10 seasons of it or whatever, right? And they did a news bulletin, it's been cancelled, big deal. But that shows you the power of, I guess, what the Kardashians represent. The fact that, the power of becoming famous just because you're famous. And I did discuss this with you the other day, about kind of the present way in which academics kind of encourage to actually comment on things in the media, to make it look like they're experts in things, right? And it's the nature of the public intellectual or being an expert on something, right? And it's more like, well, somebody on radio might bring it up, or newspapers says, can you comment on this or that? And it usually might be, if you're an expert in IT or social media or something, like Facebook, privacy, or whatever that kind of thing, or cyberbullying kind of thing. So often it's like a digital ethics issue that people from the media might contact an IT academic and comment. It wouldn't be like, why is it that Windows 10 is a crappy operating system, or something like that? Because I don't care, right? Like those kind of things, right? And the thing is, like, and then there are a lot of people that kind of achieve celebrity status in that way, or they write magazine articles, online stuff, or wrote a book, something like that. Or the holy grail for like a celebrity academic would be to host your own TV show. So like in the UK, for example, there are a lot of British academics that achieve kind of celebrity status because the BBC and other stations there actually kind of run heaps of documentaries, right? And usually they would kind of tap an academic on the shoulder and say, "Can you host this series?" And then that academic then becomes like super, celebrity. So I'm just trying to find one example of someone. If you know, see, okay, oh, what's it called? Niall. I'll share you an example of a celebrity academic. It's okay, and it's not Kim Kardashian or Professor Kim Kardashian. It's Niall Ferguson. So Niall Ferguson is a Scottish-born historian and the Milbank Family Senior Fellow at the Hoover Institute at Stanford University. Etc. So if you look at this, right, he was also jumping ship, but jumping ship at prestigious universities. So originally, right, he started off his academic career getting his PhD at Oxford, I think, right? So when he got a position at Oxford teaching history, right, and I think his area was like looking at the history of finance, money, commerce, etc., right? And they had a documentary series about the history of money, right? And it was like a multi-part series, right? And he hosted that, and it was very successful. And then he hosted another series and wrote books based on that, right? And then he was basically poached by, I think, Harvard University, and he got a joint appointment at New York University, and then kind of wrote more books and hosted more series. And, and then he kind of jumped ship from Harvard, and now he's working for Stanford University. So, in other words, he's a kind of contemporary example of a celebrity academic. And in the past, academics, wouldn't do that. They would just be writing books or papers or stuff like that, and they'd be anonymous, and nobody knows who they are. So now you've got a whole, cluster of people, like the Kim Kardashians of academia.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just
but they're all worse. Yeah.
stick to music.
Well, yeah, the thing is, it's more like, the people would say, it's kind of cool if you're a celebrity academic because then it's easier to actually get a book published. Because if you're just a regular person, you go to a publisher, they'd say, piss off or something like that. Right? But if you're a celebrity academic, they would chase you. They would chase you. Now, another example of a celebrity academic is Steven Pinker, who's a professor of psychology at Harvard University, and originally was at MIT. When it was at MIT, he wrote a book which kind of sold a lot of copies, right? And then for his next book, the publisher said, we want you to write a book on how the mind works. That's the title of How the Mind Works. And we'll give you a cash advance of $600,000 US. 600,000 cash advance before you even write one word. So that was the largest cash advance in history for an academic, or even for a regular person, right? Getting a book. And the thing is, and that's because it became a cash cow. The publishers realized that people were kind of hungry for authoritarian knowledge. It's more like so rather than you go to a university and do a course, right? You just read a book, but not like a normal textbook that's boring, right? Something that's a little bit more readable, and that's what kind of publishers are looking at from celebrity academics.
Can you see yourself publishing books?
Well, I mean, see, remember the thing that the paper that we wrote, the one about Orville and Wilbur?
Yep.
Talking about MOOCs, I think, in a Catholic era, and that kind of stuff, I think, is kind of, I think, the thing that I actually want to explore, because it seems a little bit more different, I think, rather than just kind of writing it on. I mean, the thing is, right, what I call these is airport books, right? If you go to any international airport in the world, and when you can fly, and you go and then look at the shelves, for example, right? There's lots of different books apart from fiction books. There's non-fiction books galore. If you look at the non-fiction section, right, at the airport bookstore, right, it's like a library, so they have sections, business, computing, etc., that kind of thing, science, right? And you can see how those shelves have actually expanded, over the years, right? So there's like, 1,001 different kind of volumes of all kind of manner of things, right? And if you look at the authors of most of those, right, they're only academics or actually kind of journalists, but mainly academics that are kind of trying to, push out their brand, So, and they're in a kind of lots of different kind of interesting, weird areas, etc. And usually, one of the things that I've noticed is something with cultural history in the title. So cultural history of whatever. So it's really strange things like the cultural history of an apple. In fact, there's actually a publisher in the US that just has volumes devoted to different items of food. So there was one book just on hot dogs, another one on hamburgers, another one on pizzas, etc. That kind of thing. Right? And it was more like if you were an actor, you could just say, I want to, I wrote a book on sardines, right? Go for it, write it, etc. That kind of thing. But then it's more like, is anybody actually going to buy these or read these? That's the thing. Yeah. Well, would you, Ilya, buy on sardines and read it?
If it was in comic style, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if it came the 400-page hardbound copy, looked like a scholarly article, forget it. I'll just throw up a bit. But if you gave me that title and it was a comic type thing, I'd be interested. I wouldn't say no.
Like this, I'll show you.
Just to see something different. Yeah. A light read, none of this heavy read stuff. I don't know how they how they actually end up selling. I'd love to see the numbers.
This one, would you read this book?
Less than what?
Would you read this book, Action Philosophers? Action Philosophers is a comic about different famous philosophers. Right? I'm not sure if they have. They don't have snippets here, but you can find this all over the internet pages from it. Right? And basically, if you picked up, I don't know, Batman or Donald Duck comic, for example, but instead of Batman or Donald Duck stories, there's stories in there about the lives of Confucius and Kant and Hume, all the people that we've talked about, right? But they do it in a kind of funny way, right? And it was kind of originally, a thing that was published every month, like a normal comic book, and then it got assembled into a book, and it's still in print, so there's ebook versions of it, and whatever, that kind of thing. And even like it says here, Dark Horse Comics published a deluxe hardcover collection of the series with new material in October 2014. Because the thing is, we're talking about intellectual property this week and maybe piracy. So because you've got e-books now as being a way in which books are actually published, it means that e-books can also be pirated, and they are. So to kind of make some money for the fact that a lot of e-books, whether they're graphic novels or books about philosophy or whatever, can be pirated. But what publishers sometimes do is they go back and print special editions of books with extra content, like as it says there. Dark Horse published a deluxe hardcover collection of Action Philosophers with new material in October 2014. Because probably Dark Horse also realized that if you had bought Action Philosophers when it came out monthly, you would have the monthly issues, right? But if you're a die-hard collector, you're probably not satisfied with it. You have to have the monthly issues, then you have to have the collected version. Right? And then when Dark Horse comes out with a hardcover with extra things, you have to have that as well. So in other words, it's ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. So even if you do get the pirate the issues right online, you're probably pirating the issues because you don't want to damage the paper copies.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like that's the strange world that we're living in now. It's like people have multiple copies of the same thing, And the copies aren't just digital; they're also physical. You know, and that
It's same as movies. Pirates will go out and actually get higher res and different formats, just to have the different types of formats for the movie that they've pirated.
Yeah, yeah. And in fact, like on Torrent Free, you can actually read articles where in the online pirate community, people, grade the quality of pirated movies. They would say, oh, this is, high res, good quality, etc. Or if it's bad quality, it's crap, etc. That kind of thing. So they have their own standards as well. Go through. But this notion that Dark Horse had of actually creating a deluxe hardcover edition of Action Philosophers with new material isn't really a new idea, because in the 19th century, Mark Twain, who was a famous American author, he wrote Adventures of Tom Sawyer. He wrote his autobiography, right? And he also had issues with copyright law as well, because he actually wanted to make money for himself, and he thought copyright law actually made money for the publishers, right? So what he had a crazy idea. He wrote his own autobiography, right? And he would then regularly reprint the autobiography but change it. And it's more like, wait a minute, how can you change your own autobiography? It happened. You can't change it, but he did. And then people had to buy the latest edition of his autobiography to see what he changed. I mean, it's like if you wrote your own autobiography, Ilya, right? And like in one volume, you had one way that you described your past. In another version, you had a different way, and so forth. Yeah. So then people might say, "What's the truth?" It doesn't really matter. You just get a different version.
Just maximising returns. Right?
Oh, no, maximizing returns. Just so you get some big bucks or little bucks, etc. That kind of thing. Yeah. Oh, I think we're almost running another couple more minutes to go, but I just wanted to maybe, ask you, Ilya, if you have any thing that you want to share with your students in terms of tips for, assignment 3, as a video, because I think I did have a question.
Cover it last week. Make sure that. Make sure you have a look at the very first part of the video. I looked at Shotcut, which is free, and OBS, which is also free. So
OBS, yeah. And I think one question that I had earlier in the week was somebody said, what should we put in that script document, right? That has to be uploaded onto Canvas for assignment 3. And I always make the point, I think it's in the assignment spec, that we only mark the video. So the video is the only thing that we mark, right? The script is more like you put your notes in there. It could be just, brief notes. It could be a complete transcript, right? But we don't look at that. We look at the link to the video. And I think maybe that's the main reason why that the script notes is there. So it's a place where you can put the link, because otherwise, where would you put the link? You know what I mean? You have to upload something onto Canvas, right? And plus also the thing that you upload onto Canvas, we can put notes on there, when we actually assess it. And I think maybe that's another thing that I should remind people, right, is that make sure that, the link that you have in that script notes when you upload it to Canvas can actually be accessed by us. So set your file permission so, RMIT users can actually access it. And I think that's pretty much all I want to actually say about assignment 3. Oh yeah, maybe like a little bit of a reminder about the learning journal for assignment 2. That you should actually read the assignment spec, because a lot of people don't really notice that you have to give yourself a mark for the learning journal, right? And I think there are 4 different grades that you can give yourself out of 30, right? So you can't kind of give yourself 30 out of 30 or 29 out of 30, right? You can only give yourself whatever those 4 categories are: HD, distinction, credit, and pass, right? And I don't think anybody's ever given themselves an NN, because it's kind of weird. So somebody self-assess, give themselves an end. It also would be depressing, right? But what's your advice, Ilya, for getting a HD? What do you look for in a HD?
I'm looking for something unique and make me laugh.
Ah, yes, I like that. Always, right? Because I remember once I was reading somebody's learning journal, and they said, I'm not really a very funny person, so it's kind of difficult for me to make people laugh, right? But I thought that was kind of funny, me just reading that, you know what I mean?
Yes, it was.
You know what I mean? It's more like that kind of honesty is kind of funny in itself, right? Um, Ah, the recording informal. So yeah. I mean, I think the thing is, the video can be informal. Right? You shouldn't kind of treat it as being like a live slideshow, which sometimes can be very. It can be informal, and maybe just as long as you have a place in the video where you do show references to something, right? And you have a list of references at the end of the video, but it can be kind of informal in nature.
It's for both. Assignment 3 as well. Yeah.
Yeah, for both as well. Yeah, like for example, like in assignment 2, for the learning journal, you can actually stick in cartoons and memes and stuff like that. I think I put up something into the Digital Ethics Club about memes, because memes are a big thing now in the digital world. It's like little funny pictures that people share with each other with captions,
Yep.
and I think I always like it when I look at a learning journal, right? And I discover memes that I've never saw before, right? And I thought, oh, that's cool. It's really an interesting meme because there's so many memes out there. It's actually a search engine for the kind of search engine for memes, right? Which I actually put into the Digital Ethics Club. So, and then those search engines are usually good because they give an indication of what's kind of trendy in terms of using memes. And that's it. Anything else, Ilya? Any
No,
other?
no. Pleasure. Oh, we've
What's
laughed
a,
at.
what, a quote? Do you want a fancy quote at the end? I think we should have a quote at the end. What's a good quote? How can we end? It's a good quote at the end. What quote?
Just try your best. Remember, you can't be anything that you want to be. You have to strive to be.
No. What was that quote that you always have? Your motto? What's your motto, Ilya?
Oh, yeah. Just keep doing what you're doing until someone tells you to stop.
Oh, okay, I like that. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Just keep pushing the boundaries.
Yeah. Or until somebody knocks on the door and says, "Get out! It's my turn."
Yeah.
And I think that's a good time to end. Thank you, Ilya, for taking part
See
this morning, afternoon. Thank you, studio audience. And please drop into the Digital Ethics Club anytime you like. Thank you. Have a good afternoon. Cheers. And I'll turn off the recording.